specify the model, but it's a 2008 Honda, and to put that into some perspective for you, that is the newest car I have ever driven. I have a lot of pride in driving beater cars, but it has definitely led to a very large share of car it was called the Hill House, and it like looked like kind of this constructed altar, and it was painted black with a bunch of like sigils all over it. But we went in the middle of the day when it was not scary, and we took a bunch of pictures, and my roommate's making stuff in the microwave, so give me one sec. And honestly, those pictures are still super cool. So